Our first guest today, Aaron Day. He's the author of The Final Countdown, Crypto, Gold, Silver, and the People's Last Stand Against Tyranny by Central Bank Digital Currencies. So many items in the news today. First, let me tell you a little bit about Aaron. He's a multifaceted entrepreneur. He's an investor, advisor, author, and political activist with almost 3 decades of experience across various sectors. He's been a fellow at the Brownstone Institute, chairman and CEO of the Daylight Freedom Foundation. And he is really dedicated to the principles of liberty. His activism began almost a decade and a half ago, and his best-selling book, The Final Countdown, talks a lot about the dangers of CBDCs, and this is obviously such an important topic. Unfortunately, Americans are not paying enough attention to this. At 46 years old, Day is a devoted father of 4 and even a grandfather. Aaron, welcome to the program. Thanks so much for joining us. I want to start off with the arrest of Roger Ver. Very few people are following this. He was arrested in Spain on tax charges by the U.S. government. And this was very conveniently, maybe not coincidentally, I'd love your thoughts, right after releasing his book on the hijacking of Bitcoin. What do we make of this, and do you suspect that the revelations in the book may have been related to this arrest?
Sure. Well, thank you for having me on, and I think this is a very important topic. I had interviewed Roger just 2 weeks before he was arrested in Spain, and his book Hijacking Bitcoin discusses something that people really aren't familiar with, which is that Bitcoin has completely changed form from when it was originally designed and released in 2009. Bitcoin was originally supposed to be peer-to-peer digital cash. So the whole idea behind it was an alternative form of money that you could use that was cheap and fast and that was available to anybody. It's permissionless. And it gained in popularity. Roger was involved very early in 2010. He ended up gaining the nickname Bitcoin Jesus because he had introduced so many individuals and businesses to Bitcoin. He was the first retailer to take Bitcoin. He was the first investor in Bitcoin-related companies. And by about 2017, people were really starting to use this as an alternative to the dollar and an alternative to fiat currency. Expedia, Microsoft, Steam, and other major retailers were accepting it directly. And what Roger highlights in his book from his direct experience is that something happened and the narrative shifted starting around 2015, where all of a sudden, instead of being digital cash that people can use to buy and sell things, it became digital gold, something that you buy and hold on to as a speculative investment. And in this book, Roger outlines who the players are behind this and what their motivations are. And the book is really written not from Roger's perspective. He actually heavily quotes the people that were involved, some of the developers in Bitcoin, and their specific comments and quotes from the time period. And so it seems very clear from his book that there are interested parties that decided to keep Bitcoin slow and expensive so that they could benefit by selling what are called second layer solutions to the problem that they helped create. And this book goes through in excruciating detail all of the insides and outsides of that dynamic. And so it just so happened that Roger released his book right around the time that financial players like BlackRock and Fidelity started selling Bitcoin ETFs to the public. And so miraculously, 2 weeks after this expose comes out, he gets arrested in Spain and now has been unable to continue to go out and discuss the contents of his book.
Yeah, and I want to talk a little bit about the contents of the book. As you said, you were able to interview him shortly before he was arrested. And, obviously nobody can accuse him of being anti-Bitcoin. But as I understand it, and I have not read the book yet, but as I understand it, he's sounding the alarm about nefarious players that want to hijack Bitcoin and basically use it for the opposite of its intended purpose. Rather than freeing people financially, they want to use it as part of the control grid and really use it to undermine freedom around the world. What do we make of these? I mean, do you think these allegations are serious? And how do we understand that as people who maybe are not experts in Bitcoin?
Well, the allegations are serious, and I believe that he's proven them definitively in the book. And anybody who's been in crypto for a long time, I first learned about Bitcoin from Roger in 2012 and have been using crypto since 2012. I've actually been living off of crypto since 2019. So I exited the banking system. And so what Roger described absolutely happened. And anybody that's been in crypto has lived this experience. So Bitcoin went from something that people used to make day-to-day transactions to something that was no longer able to be used because it was too expensive and too slow to use. And so he outlines basically what happened, which is that some of the developers that were working on Bitcoin formed a separate corporation called Blockstream. And that Blockstream corporation makes money and profits by selling solutions to Bitcoin remaining slow and expensive. And he kind of walks through all of the different, permutations and interactions that led to that. When Bitcoin was originally designed, it was designed to compete with Visa and MasterCard. It was always supposed to be able to handle a large number of transactions, and it was supposed to be something that people used as digital cash. That was in the title of the white paper itself. And that narrative shifted, and he lays out who specifically was behind it and what their motivations were. And this dovetails with me because with my book and my research, what I found is there's an even deeper, kind of more sinister connection. The same people that funded keeping Bitcoin slow and expensive also funded all 3 US CBDC pilots. So in one fell swoop, Bitcoin became unusable as digital cash while a United States CBDC was being developed. So that to me is a really interesting twist that most people are unaware of.
Wow. Before I get into whether we can salvage Bitcoin still at this point, I've heard just in recent weeks, and one of our mutual friends has been talking about this. Bitcoin, it seems like they're using it, the establishment, the evildoers, if you will, they're using it for a few things. One thing is to just absorb all the inflation, right? They're printing money like it's going out of style. And so, hey, $1 trillion in Bitcoin that gets $1 trillion out from inflating asset bubbles elsewhere. Another key mechanism, as I understand it, I've heard several people talking about this now, is linking it to the carbon markets that they want to basically put at the foundation of the restructured new global economy. Are these threats, and what other ways is Bitcoin being hijacked that would be nefarious, I guess, from the perspective of supporting individual liberty and a free market?
Well, I think what's going on with Bitcoin is it's a diversion. So now people are putting money into it as an asset class. But if you actually compare and you go back and look to what FDR did in the 30s, FDR confiscated gold. And then there were a series of Supreme Court cases called the Gold Clause cases that actually stated that companies that had previously had contracts where they agreed to settle in gold now could no longer use gold. They now had to use the US dollar instead. And I actually think that these ETFs are a backdoor way for the government to be able to confiscate Bitcoin, because now you have large financial players like BlackRock who are creating these financial instruments, and they don't even hold the Bitcoin themselves. They're using exchanges like Coinbase. So if I'm a customer and I'm buying into an ETF, at no point do I ever own or get possession of Bitcoin. When I sell the ETF, I get paid in dollars. And so this is basically a way to centralize the supply. And it's even in the risk factors of these ETFs that the government could come in and confiscate and crypto. And so I think it's just creating a sitting duck situation. And so what this does is people are not, because I've traveled to 20 states talking about the threat of CBDCs, and most people in the general public aren't even aware that you can use Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies as a currency. They only think of it as a speculative asset class. And so now people aren't using crypto for day-to-day transactions. Now only 1% of Americans actually use crypto to buy and sell things. And so it's a very big distraction. But your point about carbon credits, so the US is very far along in developing CBDCs. They started working on it in 2015. And they really accelerated development in 2019. So they have CBDC digital currency, programmable currency, that can do 1.8 million transactions per second. And not to get too bogged down in the details, but Bitcoin, BTC, can do 7 transactions per second. This CBDC can do 1.8 million transactions per second. And my view is, in having studied the 134 different CBDC pilots that are going on all over the globe, I think the goal is to actually move towards one global digital currency that is backed by carbon credits. I think that's actually the end game of all of this. And I can go into whatever level of detail that you want, but you can see this very clearly with what's going on with MasterCard. There's already a branded MasterCard that people can voluntarily sign up for that's branded with the United Nations and Strategic Development Goal 13, where as you spend your card, if you hit certain carbon usage thresholds, it actually cuts off that card. That exists today in the place.
Yeah, and I saw that. I was on the Arabian Peninsula just about half a year ago for the UN Climate Summit, and MasterCard had these big billboards now with individual personal carbon footprint trackers. I was just in Wisconsin, and I was meeting with a variety of state senators and state representatives. They said the farm lobby is now urging them to develop a state-backed carbon calculator so that they can figure out exactly how much CO2 is coming from their dairy or their farming operation, whatever it is. And the argument was, well, other states, including Iowa and things, they have already started working on these things, so we don't want to get left behind. So it does seem like we're moving toward a radically new financial and monetary model with carbon credits, CO2 at the core of it. But walk us through, what does it look like at the end? Let's say, Aaron, that we don't stop these people. Let's say that they are successful in creating this new global CBDC system based on carbon credits and all the rest of it. What does that look like from a privacy perspective, from a freedom perspective? What does the global economy even look like at that point?
I mean, this is a system that's really based on technocracy. So you have to look at it from the perspective of the whole viewpoint, the whole worldview of this is that elites pick scientists and engineers to basically make decisions for people. So this is not a system that is based on individual rights or property rights at all. This is a system that, if you give them the most charitable view on this, their viewpoint is that, you know, we're facing scarcity. We're going to, you know, annihilate ourselves as humans. And so the only way to solve this is through the application of technology. And the only way to do that is to get the best scientists and engineers. And the way to do that is, of course, to have elites pick these people. And so this is the structure of it. And what it looks like at the end is, you know, basically one world global government. And if you look at the 17 Sustainable Development Goals of the UN, those are basically elements of a social credit system. And those elements of the social credit system are all then tied back into carbon credits. And so you can look at every aspect of this. And so you'll basically have an app. So where you live, where you work, so 15-minute cities, what healthcare options are available to you, what you can eat, all of that is basically governed from the top down through these 17 SDGs. And to give you a highlight of what that might look like, you know, if you're in the United States and you've been following it, I mean, the obesity epidemic, I think, was largely caused by the USDA food pyramid, which put carbs at the base. Well, we have a new global diet coming out called the Lancet diet. And this Lancet diet actually says they want to eliminate or move to almost zero red meat. And they are actually building into the diet insect protein. They're even having added sugar. And when you study the diet itself, at no point does the diet say that this diet is designed to optimize human health. It actually takes into consideration carbon allocation. So the reason you can't have red meat is because it's too damaging for the environment. The reason that they're trying to ban natural gas stoves is yet again another component of you can't measure gas stoves from a, you know, tracking perspective. So literally all of these aspects of your life and the 17 Sustainable Development Goals have at their basis as a control system this manufactured scarcity around carbon credits.
Wow. Sounds like utopia to me. Aaron, I want to get your thoughts on how we resist this. But first, back to Bitcoin for a moment. Can it be salvaged, or is the hijacking too far? I mean, what would be your advice if someone said, you know, a friend of yours, hey, should I buy Bitcoin? How do I do it? Why do I do it? Or is it too late? Has it been hijacked and it is now irredeemable?
Well, I mean, as a speculative investment, I don't look at these things as an investment. I look at alternative currency. I don't think it can be saved as a currency because it's too embedded into the structure now. And you can see when you see Michael Saylor, who's now the kind of the standard bearer for Bitcoin, and I share a video clip from him where he says that, you know, Bitcoin is not to compete with the dollar, it's not to compete with the euro or MasterCard or Visa, and we're going to comply with know your customer laws and anti-money laundering laws. So the entire use case and the entire structure that everybody is spending all of their time and resources on is just as a store of value. And that doesn't help us in any way, shape, or form in terms of having an alternative to CBDCs. So what I've been doing is actually working on trying to create an open source solution that uses multiple cryptocurrencies and gold and silver to create an alternative to CBDCs that is as fast and inexpensive as the traditional financial system or what they're trying to roll out with CBDCs. So I don't comment on speculative investing. I dumped all of my stocks, bonds, and everything else. I don't trust anything at this point that isn't self-custody, and my entire focus is on trying to find alternative currencies so that people can engage in voluntary trade without having to be stuck with this big brother digital control system in the form of central bank digital currencies.
Well, on that subject, Aaron, I'm working on an article right now for the Epic Times about these state-level initiatives. You've got, I'm sure you've heard, the state of Texas is working to try to turn their state gold bullion depository into an institution that would facilitate transactions with gold and precious metals through a kind of a debit card that would be issued by the depository. I just spoke yesterday briefly with the treasurer for the state of Utah, Marlo Oaks, and he has now put together a working group on this very issue. It looks like they have some strong support for legislation there, and I understand even in Florida, we're going to be looking at that in 2025. Do you think this is something that should come just straight from the market? Is there a role for state governments here in trying to come up with an alternative currency to protect us from, say, mandatory CBDCs?
So I'm promoting kind of a dual strategy. I like the state-based approach, and in fact, I've joined the Centers for Sound Money, who's working on this very approach of trying to promote state-level states making gold and silver legal tender. However, we actually also need to simultaneously develop systems so that people are educated and start using gold and silver. And I don't think we have as much time as others do in terms of stopping CBDCs. But I think that these strategies work well together. I know Utah, Wyoming, Oklahoma, and Arkansas have already declared gold and silver as legal tender. And I know 24 states are working on this. So I wholeheartedly support that approach, but I also support doing everything that we can to improve adoption. In fact, I'm holding right now a gold back. So I go around the country giving seminars based on my book where I explain to people what's going on, the threat of CBDCs, what's happening with the dollar and the inevitable crash of the dollar. And then I give people self-custody crypto gold and silver so that they can start using it for day-to-day transactions. And I think there are 2,000 businesses now nationwide that already take gold backs. So the more we can get people using these things, the better off we'll be, because we don't want to find ourselves in a situation where, a bunch of states have made gold and silver legal tender. They pass CBDCs, but yet nobody has any gold or silver, and businesses aren't set up or structured at the point of sale to receive gold and silver. So we kind of have to do both strategies simultaneously.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned Goldbacks. We actually had the CEO of Goldback on the program. I've got some right here on my desk, and very, very nice. So what do we do? And you said something that I want to stop on, too. You mentioned that you think we don't have as much time as a lot of other people out there are assuming we have. How much time do you think we have? What does this changeover look like? I mean, should we expect a major crisis as the catalyst to bring in this new currency system? And what are your thoughts on what an average person can do to try to stop this? So, I mean, what are just some easy things that somebody could do right now to try to prevent this, or at least protect themselves?
So my biggest concern, and so I was an activist for a long time, and I kind of left for 4 or 5 years. And then after COVID happened, and then I started to see some of my friends in New Hampshire were targeted by the federal government. My friend Ian Freeman was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison for selling Bitcoin. Jeremy Kauffman, who started Library, was targeted by the SEC. So I started to dig into, well, why is this happening? What is this crackdown on crypto all about? And so what I found is that, the U.S. has been working on CBDCs since 2015. And they have completed 3 pilots. And I won't go into all the details, but there's Project Hamilton, Project Cedar, and Regulated Liability Network. Project Hamilton is a retail CBDC, which basically replaces cash. CEDAR is for wholesale for banks communicating with one another. And regulated liability network is basically one ledger that tracks all CBDCs and then all other digital assets. So the idea for the future is every asset you own will be digitized and assigned a token, and that token will be recorded on this same ledger with CBDCs and tracked by multiple third parties. And so these are all pilots that are underway at various stages of development. It is current government policy under Biden through Executive Order 14067 for the U.S. to pursue a CBDC while cracking down on crypto. So currently the government's stated position is that we want to explore these CBDCs, and they have absolutely been cracking down on all aspects of crypto. I mean, we're in kind of the late stages here. There are really only 4 major U.S. exchanges left where you can buy crypto. All 4 of them are being sued by the SEC. The SEC has gone after 130 companies. The CFTC has gone after just 47 companies last year in the crypto space. The largest ever fine by the Treasury Department was last year, or this year. It was Binance. It was a $4 billion penalty. And so they're shutting off people's ability to buy and sell crypto. They are shutting off the ability for people to keep their transactions private. There are things called coin mixing services, and the people running those have been arrested, and those services have been shut down. So it is an all-out assault right now to shut down crypto, which I believe is being done to pave the way for CBDCs. There are 134 countries right now that are pursuing CBDCs. There are more CBDC accounts globally than there are crypto accounts. And so these are things that people are not aware of. People think that this is far off in the future. China has rolled out CBDCs. 11 countries have rolled out CBDCs. So what I realized throughout this process is the only way to stop this is to come up with an alternative solution. So I exited fiat, and I've been living off of crypto and then increasingly gold and silver. And I'm actually working on building an open source project for merchants where merchants can take crypto, gold, and silver, because to your point, they will roll this out in an emergency. And you can already see it, being set up. We got the Patriot Act 45 days after 9/11. We got TARP 18 days after Lehman Brothers collapsed. And the CARES Act was passed 16 days after COVID was declared a pandemic. And so the excuse they're going to use for CBDCs will be related to terrorism and money laundering. And they're already talking about that, and they're putting this into various bills. So all of a sudden there's a cyber attack or a terrorist attack, and they're going to say, oh, well, if we don't eliminate cash and completely crack down on cryptocurrencies, people aren't safe. And it will probably pass with bipartisan support. So this is why I'm concerned. I've been concerned that they might try to implement something like this before the election. But make no mistake, they'll roll it out in an emergency. They're not going to try to roll it out under kind of peaceful conditions using incentives. They will use fear, and they will use an emergency to roll it out. And when you look at the state of the world right now, at any point in time, there is a potential catalyst for this to actually take place.
Yeah, fascinating, Aaron. Everything that you're saying is exactly what my research has found. You and I have never talked in person before, other than email. And it's amazing. Everything you just said lines up perfectly with what I am seeing as well, and what we've been reporting here on this program with the Bank for International Settlements, helping to lead the way, tokenizing every asset in the universe, putting it on this international blockchain ledger that you can only interact with a CBDC and a digital ID that would be brought in through a crisis. So $50 trillion question, Aaron, and then we'll let you go. What should we be doing about it? I mean, call your congressman, buy gold, buy a gun? What do we do?
Well, I mean, I moved to New Hampshire because that's actually this part of the Free State Project, but I exited the dollar. So I've been living off of crypto, gold, and silver. And so I would begin that
Aaron, let me
process.
stop you here. How do you, because I heard you say that, but how does a normal person do that? I mean, you can't go down to the grocery store and buy your groceries in gold, silver, or crypto. You can't put gasoline in your car. I mean, how does a normal person do that? And is that practical for a normal person?
Well, so there are some things that you can do now, and a lot of it involves not having a bank account, but basically using crypto to buy gift cards and debit cards. And there are services that allow you to pay bills directly using cryptocurrency. So there's a service called BitPay, another service called Spritz Finance, where you can actually go online and pay your bills using crypto. So you can actually pay for. You'd be surprised how many things that you can actually pay for. However, it's kind of a cheat because you're still buying a debit card or you're buying a gift card. And the whole purpose of this is for direct peer-to-peer transactions. So this is why I mentioned the initiative I'm working on now is to actually launch a free open source point of sale system that merchants can use so that people can pay directly with gold, silver, or crypto. Something else that I've been doing recently, it's related to Goldbacks. I have an account at Goldbacks through Goldpack, through Alpine Gold. And I can actually buy gold and silver and then pawn the gold and silver to myself and have the value loaded on a debit card. So I actually have a Visa branded debit card that is backed by gold and silver. So at no point in time do I have to touch fiat currency. So basically what I'm trying to do with this point of sale system is figure out a way where consumers can use crypto or gold or silver in either tokenized form or actual form. Merchants can accept it, and therefore we can create a completely parallel alternative system to the existing fiat system. So this is the best solution I've been able to come up with. I've spent a lot of time on the political front. I mean, I could go into this. I talked to Vivek and pushed Vivek to push Trump on CBDCs. I'm not encouraged about the federal government stopping this. Even the legislation that you've seen in the last couple of weeks, people are like, oh, wow, crypto's winning. You know, we have this new blockchain bill, or we have this Fit 20 bill. And when you look at these bills and you actually read them, what you'll find is they're giving more power to the banks. And so the people writing these bills just track where they get their money from and then read the bills themselves. But in essence, what they're doing is they're giving banks the ability to custody crypto on behalf of customers, which is one step away from banning self-custody. They're giving more power to the Secretary of Commerce to regulate blockchain, which is not good news. If the president's stated policy is to pursue a central bank digital currency, and now we're giving more power to his cabinet level appointee, who, by the way, is a member of the Trilateral Commission, so is very much in tune with globalist technocracy. And then they even passed an anti-CBDC bill, which in the House only, in which people say to me, oh, isn't this great? But if you read the bill, the Federal Reserve never had the authority to create a CBDC. That was something that always required congressional approval. So all this anti-CBDC bill does is restate current law. And what should be more alarming to people is that almost half of Congress seem to be okay with giving up congressional authority to create central bank digital currencies. And essentially, that actually to me is a more alarming part of it. So from my perspective, you know, crypto, they're shutting off the on-ramps, they're throwing people in prison, they're doing everything they can to crack down. And the new legislation is just show legislation that gives more power to banks. So from my perspective, this all comes down to radical noncompliance and people pursuing alternative systems in parallel economies.
Well, that's a lot to digest, Aaron. I'm looking forward to having you back once you have this platform more developed. We'd love to use it at Liberty Sentinel. We don't do tons of business, but we do some. We sell all our books, DVDs, and a number of other products. So keep us updated. Thank you very much for all that you're doing. The book, again, is The Final Countdown, Crypto, Gold, Silver, and the People's Last Stand Against Tyranny by Central Bank Digital Currencies. Aaron Day, thank you so much for spending some time with us, sharing your insight. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.